if you're going through pain, you've got to find some promises you can hold on to. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. You're my workmanship created for things that I've pre-planned for you. Goodness and mercy will pursue you all the days of your life. You've got to hang on to those promises because those are what's going to get you through the pain.
You are loved by God. Well, Lecrae, it's so great to have you here finally on See Hear Love. We've been wanting to have you on the show for a while, so thanks so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Lecrae, I want to start with something really positive, especially in a year like we've had this year and the year that we're having. I want to talk about hope. You know, just sort of finding hope in a world that's chaotic, that is disappointing, where we are lamenting so much loss and injustice. How do you stay hopeful, Lecrae? And how would you tell somebody to just hold on to hope in a day and time like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, on a practical level, I think it is practicing gratitude, and practicing, a mindset that is constantly focused on the things that you're grateful for, the things that you've been blessed to see, the things that you believe can happen. Oftentimes that just gives us a picture of hope. You always have to, hope anticipates better. And so it's just anticipating something better, continuing to dream, continuing to practice gratitude. From a spiritual perspective, for me, I always reflect on the fact that, I took a trip to Israel and I walked inside of an empty tomb. And seeing an empty tomb gave me hope because it reminded me that death is defeated and all the things that I'm seeing around me are defeated as well.
That's awesome. In Israel, I went a number of years ago to Lecrae, and one of my favorite moments actually was in the Garden of Gethsemane, where I kind of touched the trees, right? Those big olive trees. And I was there was a moment where I felt sort of the anguish of Jesus as he was going to the cross, but then this peace in the garden like I'd never experienced before. It was pretty awesome.
I love that.
Did you go to the Garden of Gethsemane?
I did, and it was powerful indeed. Spent a lot of time just meditating. Yeah.
Part of hope too, Lecrae, as I think about your life and all the things that you've experienced and all the choices, here you are now. And I think it's that, redemption story, the same as mine. I made some really poor choices growing up. They called me the prodigal daughter, always knew Jesus, but totally ran away from him. How are you able today, in all the past stuff you've done, just be able to live well, live how do I say it? Live with, that's the past. And now today I kind of move forward, that you don't allow the past to overcome you and overwhelm you with the regret and kind of maybe even shame associated to the things that we did.
Yeah. I mean, shame is a liar. Shame will condemn you and tell you that you're not forgiven, that there's no hope for the future, and that, there's not a better future in mind. Shame has a disregard for Romans 8:28, which says all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And so you just have to remember, since inception, since Adam and Eve, shame has been a weapon. It's shame them, and they're covering themselves up and running away from God. And that's what shame does, is it makes you run away from God. And so you have to remind yourself that shame is a liar because of the consequences of our actions. And sometimes it's just earthly consequences for some of the things that you've done. You will wrestle with a bit of regret because you're always thinking about, man, what if, and this would be different if this and this didn't happen. But you can't change the past. All you can do is plow forward with a better, newer future. So for me, I try to stay in that space where I'm thinking about, okay, but what can I do now? Because I can't do anything about that what has happened, but what can I do moving forward? And find yourself getting excited about that. Find yourself just, focusing on what you can do moving forward.
That's good. So don't get stuck in the past, but always be looking ahead and looking forward.
Yeah.
Lecrae, if I can say this as, honestly, I'm really proud of your stand and your voice in the racial tensions and race-related issues that we're finding ourselves in. Thank you for standing up and being a voice with that. And I know you've had such backlash wow, and just stuff thrown at you and that.
Yeah.
How have you navigated that, especially because some of the backlash has been Christians, evangelical Christians?
Yeah.
How have you navigated that? And what would you say to that? Because I mean, here at See Her Love, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion and standing up for injustice. The women on my show, Lecrae, are all BIPOC and very much intentional for me to amplify voices of women of all different races and cultures and backgrounds. So important. And so it's my heart. And so when I hear someone like you who's just been, hurt, it actually pains us. So I just wanted to say that to you. And so how are you doing? How have you navigated through that today?
Yeah. I mean, obviously when you speak out, and what you're saying is not received, well in terms of race or ethnicity or justice issues, there's a tendency to retreat into yourself and to say, well, I'm done with everybody and I'm done, and that's the kind of knee-jerk reaction. But what I've learned is that, when you're doing real life-altering work, when you're doing real kingdom work, because that's what justice work is kingdom work, you're going to face opposition. That's just a part of the work. And oftentimes the arguing and the bickering is a distraction from getting the work done. Many of God's people are so off mission. Like it's kind of like hunting dogs, right? When hunting dogs don't have a fox to chase, they start fighting amongst each other. Mm-hmm. And because we're so off mission, we just get caught up with fighting each other instead of seeing each other as allies and on the same team and needing to push forward. And so for me, I'm grateful for individuals like Latasha Morrison, who wrote Be the Bridge, because she wants to educate people from different ethnicities. But for me, I have to stay focused on the work at hand because I get too distracted with all of the side comments and defending yourself. And, it becomes difficult. And so my prayer and hope is that people just see the content of my character, the consistency of the work that I'm trying to do, and say, okay, well, maybe there's something we're missing in this process, but there's too many people who need hope, care, generosity, grace, empathy, help for me to get too caught up in all of the sidebar conversations.
I like that, Lecrae. I mean, what advice would you give? I mean, a lot of my girlfriends and friends and people that I know are choosing to stand up, and it's been really hard. What encouragement you say to them today is they're just like, feeling the backlash, but knowing that their voice, and even for me, like my voice needs to be heard. We need to stand up for equality. And so what would you say to us?
Yeah, I would say that this isn't new. You're in good company. I think of Moses, who, Hebrews talks about him having to deny all of his privileges in Egypt to stand up for the people of God, to stand up for the people who were oppressed. And it wasn't received well. It wasn't as if Egypt was like, you know what, Moses, you're right. Wow, this is so good. It didn't go well for him. It was a stressor. And then also I think of people who looked at Jesus to be a political savior, and he just wouldn't do it. He just would not be the political savior that they wanted him to be. And so he was murdered for that. And I would just say you're in good company if you're struggling with this. You're walking in the footsteps of godly people, and continue to build and use your anger constructively. Don't be destructive with it. Don't fight back. Continue to love people and pray for them, but don't waste your time trying to explain yourself over and over again to people who are bent on misunderstanding you.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a good reminder, Lecrae. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing I find so interesting about your story and encouraging is just your openness about your own mental health struggles.
Mm.
Um, that's especially, I think for a lot of us, I mean, I struggled with depression. When you're on platform and you're a leader, it's always that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, do I want to share it? Do I want to be open about it? Oh, what are people going to think? Really appreciate your openness about it. Let's talk about mental health. Lecrae, that's a big topic for our show. A lot of sort of millennials and our viewers, those are our top sort of watch shows because everybody wants to learn and know about how to sort of navigate, manage mental health or how to be with people with it.
Mhm.
I just sort of love your thoughts on your own personal journey with it, encouragements, things, do, not to do, say, just your thoughts about it overall.
Yeah. Well, I think that, mental health is, it's going to be different for everyone. The people's experiences with, the mental health struggles are different from person to person to person. And I think we have to remember that. I think we can't kind of categorize what depression looks like or what anxiety looks like and just kind of rope it all in. As different as our personalities are, or how our mental health struggles are navigated with each individual person. So I think you have to have a level of empathy and a level of understanding with each individual person as they express themselves. I know for me, um, you know, I grew up just kind of stuffing all of the trauma and all of the struggles that I was dealing with and just kind of keeping them under wraps. And, it ultimately uh, exposed itself in, anxiety and depression. And those are things that I'll probably have to navigate and manage for the rest of my life. But the beauty of it is that I get to process it and I get to explore it and not run away from it. And as I explore it and I process it, I'm better at articulating what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling and what I'm battling. And it helps other people be able to navigate that as well. And then also for those people who do struggle with their mental health, I would just say give a measure of grace to people on the outside, because you look normal, you talk normal, you seem normal, and if they're not educated, they don't see what's the big deal. In their mind, you should just snap out of it or get over it
Right.
or just move through it. And sometimes, it's not worth um, trying to walk somebody through exactly what's going on with you if they're not if they're not willing to go into that tunnel of chaos and be educated. For those friends who want to do that, then I say by all means send them the links, send them the books, whatever it may be. And I have some great friends like that. And if you're going to be a great friend to somebody, it behooves you to learn and understand what that looks like and to navigate it. But yeah, don't stress yourself out or add more fuel to that fire by being all frustrated and like, oh, you just don't understand. It's kind of like, hey, most people are not going to, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Lean on the ones who do and try to educate those people who are willing to learn.
That's good. Lecrae, what do you do when you're getting to that place, when you're starting to get anxious or you're feeling kind of the slip into depression?
Mm.
What is something that you do that kind of helps you not go there or stay there?
Yeah. So a lot of it is, I'm a big proponent of cognitive behavioral therapy, and that type of therapy helps you to think through, what is true and what is real. I mean, it's stuff that God tells us already. In Philippians,
Yeah.
it's like think on whatever's good, whatever's pure. It's just a reminder to renew your mind daily, to meditate on things that are true, and to combat a lot of those thoughts. So perhaps it's many of the thoughts of depression come from regret or things or looking at yourself in a very like, oh, I don't like something about myself, and you have to battle that, and you have to say, okay, is this true? Is it absolutely true? Like, I'm a failure. Is that true? well, I feel like a failure. Now, is that true? No, it's not. Okay. Is it absolutely true? No, it's not. What are some evidences that it's not true? And then you focus on those evidences and you remind yourself, okay, that's a lie. As far as anxiety is concerned, it's just a lot of anxiety is built on forecasting and foretelling about what's going to happen, and you don't know, and you have to tell yourself that, like, I really don't know if that's the case. Oh, I'm gonna blow this and everything's gonna go to, terrible. And it's like, is that true? Have you seen this? Do you know this for a fact? And then you just back yourself off the ledge. And that's just the helpful part of managing. And once you get good at that, you can start doing it in seconds and talking yourself out of it.
That's really good. Those are really practical things. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think when you said about anxiety, when I have those moments, I'm like, it's not even happened yet. And I'm worrying about something that, and you just get so frustrated because I'm like, I'm sitting in my house thinking about something that's going to happen, and worrying about it. I know.
Yeah.
So I love that, sort of to pause and then kind of go, okay, and manage that. That's great.
Yeah.
Lecrae, I want to talk about your dad.
Yeah.
And wow, the reunion of your, long absent father. We have had topics on fatherlessness in our show, forgiving our father. We have a lot of that on this show. I want your thoughts for that, because I think that's so important, especially, for women, for men, but for women too, the connection with our dads, and it hasn't all been great.
Mm-hmm.
Some have been. What was that like first meeting him? And I think just the journey as a young man without a dad, and then finding him, and now you being a dad. What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah. Well, first I have to give credit to my sister, because it was her idea, and she was like, I found his address, he's got somewhere to stay now. Let's see him one time, at least. And I was like, whoa, all right, talk about a tailspin.
Wow.
So it was going to be new for both of us. Both of us hadn't seen him.
For how long? How long it was?
Oh, I think I was 9 years old the last time I saw him. And that was for like a day, you know what I mean? And so I saw him once, and then my sister had seen him once when she was in high school, and at that point in time, he was homeless, and just so happened to find out where she worked in high school, and came up there, but didn't talk to her, just wanted to stare at her. And it was just a weird kind of deal.
Yeah.
So we didn't know really. We were kind of like, man, I don't know what this means. But I think for both of us, there was a sense of, we want to say we saw him, we talked to him, we at least got an interaction with him in the event that something would happen to him, or he was no longer alive. And we made the trip, and what we had decided was that we're not going to have heavy expectations. Our goal is not to get every question we wanted answered. Our goal is not to walk off into the sunset with the dad we always wanted.
Right.
Our goal was just to see him and, be able to say, we put eyes on you. And if there's a future, we'll explore that at that time. And I think that was very healthy for us, managing our expectations. Mm-hmm. And so that was great, because we were able to just kind of go in, see him, and he was way more open than we imagined. And he wanted to talk to us, and he wanted to express things. And, and it wasn't, happy, because obviously he's a different generation, and he's from a generation where they're not all in touch with their emotions and feelings and processing and therapy. And so it's kind of like, what do you mean? How do I feel? We don't talk like that. And so, it's a process. It was a process, and it's been a process. But what we can say is that now we have contact with him, and now we can have conversations with him, and to the best of his ability, and we're able to connect and learn what we never knew.
And so, what would you say though, biggest challenge growing up without a dad? Like, knowing that he's out there, but he's not having any connection or relationship with you.
I think it definitely wore on me in terms of just identity, because no matter what, you you're going to look up to your father, without him even deserving it. So every kid, it just has this esteemed picture of their father, until they do something to shake that. So he was always a hero of mine that never existed. And I thought, well, because he's a hero, one day he'll come and save me. And if he doesn't, then it must be something wrong with me, because he's a hero,
Mm,
you know. And
yeah.
so that was the toughest part, is me absorbing all of the reason why he wasn't around.
And so, what was the connection then when you made the decision to follow Jesus, God is Father? How
Yeah,
did that help you, Lecrae, when it was like the hero doesn't come back, and now I have this relationship with God as Father?
yeah. So it was a beautiful disaster.
Oh, I like that. I like that
Yeah,
a lot.
it's a beautiful disaster. It was very beautiful in the sense that I had found, um, the source of purpose and meaning and value, and it didn't have to be inside of another person. No one had to give that to me. God did, and God was a father unlike any other, and he continues to be. And that part is beautiful. The disastrous part is because I had to learn how to interact with the father. I didn't know what that looked like, and there's this fear that he'll leave me too one day, so I got to do everything right, and I got to get it right. And so it's just a process of me learning that God is relational and not transactional, that he wants to be there. He wants to walk with me. He wants to continue. And what that has shown me is how to be a father to my own kids, is to let them know, hey, listen, there's nothing you can do to make me love you more or less. I'm always going to be here.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
In that, the big question that we ask a lot of our guests is why Jesus? Of any religion or person to follow or to commit your life to, why have you chosen Jesus out of all of them?
Yeah.
And what has that meant to you in your life today?
It's a good question. It's funny. I remember probably a year before I decided to follow Jesus. I had two good friends. One was an atheist, and one was a Muslim. And I was just exploring. I was just curious. I was curious about all religions and all paths, and I'm asking them questions, and I just was like, I was kind of ashamed at my weakness because they seemed so strong, right? Like my atheist friend was like, well, there's no God, it's just us. We have to figure it out. And I was like, oh my God, that's too much for me. I don't know how to tie my own shoe. I'm just, how can you do it?
Yeah.
And then my Muslim friend, he was like, man, here's our book, here's what we follow, here's what we believe. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you're so disciplined. I don't have the discipline. How in the world am I'm done for? And 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 what I came to find is that, of all the paths to take, there was no path where I didn't have to kind of work or strive to have a relationship with God, until I found Christ, where he says, listen, you are weak. You aren't disciplined enough. So I'm going to have to reach down and do the work for you and pull you up. And I'll connect you with the Father that way, because you're not going to be able to earn your way or make it. And that to me made all the difference. And that's, even to this very day, I tell people I'm not a Christian because I'm strong and have it all together. I'm a Christian because I'm weak and know I need a savior. And that's been the difference maker for me.
Amazing. And as you follow Jesus, Lecrae, how would you say he has informed decisions? I mean, music, entrepreneurship, relationships,
Yeah.
writing books, like, I mean, all these things. How would you say Jesus has informed that or influenced that in a very practical way?
I look at how he walked and how he he guided and taught. And, for me, it was his consistent care for the marginalized, his consistent care for the disenfranchised, his consistent care for those who didn't have a voice, and him even being born into a system where he didn't have a voice. That to me is the pathway that I need to follow. Is a pathway that where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Is the pathway where I love my neighbor as myself. And that's why I'm always, gutting myself in my music and my writings, because I want the broken people of this world to be able to say, wow, maybe there is hope. Maybe there's healing available. And that's what informs everything I do. Lastly, I always think of the man at the pool of Bethesda who was, an invalid who couldn't walk for 38 years, and how desperate he must have been. And I think of how desperate people are out there. I know what it's like to be desperate, and just a little hope. Give me something, please. And I always want to provide that for people. And that's what Jesus has done for me. And I want to be able to do that for others.
Yes, I love it. And then final question, Lecrae, for the next generation who are listening and watching, from all the experiences that you've had in your life and all the learnings, what would be your encouragement to them today to just keep going? For those that are discouraged, who are disillusioned, who are confused, overwhelmed, what would you say to that young millennial who's watching, listening today?
Yeah, I would say, man, it's very important for us to remember that God keeps his promises. If you know that he keeps his promises, you know what's possible, right? Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, plans for a future and a hope. He tells that to a group of people who are going through pain. They're in captivity. They're going to be captive for 70 years. But what they get to do in that process is hold on to a promise. So in the midst of the pain, there's a promise, and God will never leave you without a promise in the midst of the pain. And so if you're going through pain, you've got to find some promises you can hold on to. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. You're my workmanship, created for things that I've pre-planned for you. Goodness and mercy will pursue you all the days of your life. You've got to hang on to those promises because those are what's going to get you through the pain.
Lecrae, talk to you for hours. Hours and hours. Thank you so much. Inspiring. Thank you for your life, for putting it on to paper and to music and to words for us to hear and connect with. And thank you for just being a voice of hope and justice and possibility and dreams for us. So thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you.